introduce the tuna sustainability certification system that we have developed since 2017. What we are doing is just to introduce you with this standard that has 5 major pillars, and it's called the UNE 1950-06 Tuna for Responsible Fisheries for tuna freezers. And what this standard has is 5 pillars that we will develop one by one. First is the one related to maritime safety. And this is more related to most of the requirements that you have under the International Maritime Organization. So it's identification number assigned to every vessel, associating it with a ship owner that is responsible for its operation. Then you have the classification of the vessel that is compiling a lot of requirements that a vessel has to have as a minimum standard for navigation at sea and also to entry in ports. And that complies, and we are not referring to not only the IMO, but also the Classification International Association, where you have very well determined elements that you had to classify, you had to standardize. So the anchorage and mooring, the electricity, the fire protection, the gas deposits, propellers, subdivision, stability and freeboard, machinery installation, navigation, pipes and pressure recipients, boat strength, welding and materials, and inspection and certification. Then you also, we had included also the question of assurances. So we are not referring as any standard, you cannot refer to any particular entity or association or whatever, but what we have put on the standard is basically what the international group of P&Is or protection and indemnity clubs are requirement to have as their requirement to have assuring a fishing vessel that is compiling all these elements that I'm going to explain now: the cure risk, injuries or death, medical expenses, repatriation, outstanding wages of sick or deceased crew members, crew member replacement expenses, personal effects, contractual obligation not cover other personnel on board, dock workers, stowaways, refugees, and persons rescued from the sea, deviation of the vessel, vessel operations, collision, salvage, removal of debris, general average, and towing. And then also environmental risk, like prevention of pollution from ships, MARPOL 7378, civil liability for bunker oil pollution damage, a limitation of liability for maritime claims, elimination of wrecks, and then this we can call it like I always compare this pillar with what you have on the planes. Would you ever fly on a plane that is not under IATA requirements? No. So this is the minimum standards that we need to have on board a fishing vessel with related to maritime safety. That has a lot to do with the IMO Cape Town agreement recently ratified by several countries. And I believe that this is a very fundamental pillar, because if a vessel does not comply with the minimum requirements to enter into any harbor, that these are the minimum requirements to have to enter into the European harbors or Japanese or the US, or then how are you going to allow that fish coming from that vessel to get into your market? Then that's the maritime safety first. Second, we are talking about a second pillar that is trying to minimize the ecosystem impacts of our fishing practices with the Code of Good Practices that was adopted in 2012 with 100% of zebra coverage. And this Code of Good Practices that is started in 2012 and is reviewed every year has a fundamental element that is the design and the use of non-entangling fats, the development and application of bycatch mitigation measures with less risk to crew and optimizing survival rate of sharks, rays, mantas, turtles, and marine mammals if occur. The fat management plan through the use of the fat logbos, 100% of survey coverage, either human or electronic, including supply vessels, crew training on good practices, independent verification by the ASTI in this case, with a control of all the observer information and the compliance of this code of good practices. And then it has a review committee that meet twice a year. You can see here is the basic observer electronic monitoring system that is on board of some of our vessels, with a minimum coverage of 6 cameras in the upper and the lower deck. And this is quite a practical way of controlling not only the catch but also the bycatch, as you can see on the side, on the right-hand side picture, where you can even measure the size of certain bycatch species with these cameras. So it's a quite comprehensive system that is able to control what we do on board. Then we have the fishing activity control pillar that is actually the flag state responsibility, with the registration of every vessel and the RFMOs, and with the obligations that the RFMO has, and with the compliance and survey of that compliance for every vessel. Then you have the fishing licensing authorization for every country with the VMS system 24/7, 365 days. And then the control center into international standards, with also the collection of fishing logbooks, landing declaration, catch certificate. So this is basically based on the Spanish administration flag state responsibility and control system of the fishing activity that is expanded to other countries. Then we have the best sanitary standards that is basically based on the EU sanitary legislation, regulation A54/2004, where you have to get your vessel registered, duly registered, if you are a member of the European Union. And if you are a vessel that is not a member of the European Union, it has to be under the EU list. That is the flag state who registered your vessel in the EU list. And then we have the basic pillar of this standard, that is the best labor conditions, that is basically transposing Convention 188 of the International Labour Organization, Working and Fishing Convention 207, with all these requirements: minimum age to work on board, medical review prior to embarkment, written contract, duration of 8 months maximum on board, salary minimum of ILO with regular payment, pay slips copies, paid holidays and resting periods, medical coverage, indemnity in case of sickness, injury or death, social security, repatriation by the ship owners, minimum crewing certification, occupational risk prevention plan, on-board evaluation plan, a training plan, a delivery and use of planned personal safety gear, one risk prevention officer per vessel, and of course the right to collective bargaining. I know that this is a very sensitive part for certain cultures, but this is integral part of 188 convention. And all these elements that we have been talking are pieces of legislation that are applicable and at international level can be certified with the certified body. Here we have some facilities that we have on board our vessels with individual or twin rooming with facilities and individual shower and toilets. This is the one of our vessels where you can find accommodation and medical care and food availability to everyone and anytime. And this standard is international, because all these 5 pillars that we have been talking can be complied by any vessel that are really demonstrating to the certifier, that is AENOR. AENOR is this Spanish National Association of Normalization and Standardization and Certification. So AENOR is certifying up to 47 vessels that are under our organization, and some others that are certified by other certifiers that are coming from different flags. In this case, we have vessels from Spain, from Seychelles, from Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Curacao, and Belize. So this is an international standard that is totally open to all the ship owners in the world. And further to that, AENOR has developed a regulation for the use of the mark AENOR Tuna, AENOR conform Tuna from Responsible Fisheries, that is based on the chain of custody regulation. And what is the requirement for the chain of custody? That it goes most to the canners. So in order to be able to use this mark, you have to get the fish coming from a vessel that is certified with Tuna from Responsible Fisheries, the APR, plus to be inscribed in an exhaustive FIP, because the environmental part of the certification comes through exhaustive FIP or even an MSC eventually. And then you can use this label on your cans, like we can see here. There are a couple of companies in Spain that are now using this brand on these products and available for last year. They started in last year, and this year they have been marketing more than 9 million cans of APR tuna. In more than 9,000 supermarkets in Spain. And this is something that we really appreciate. These two companies, Campos and Isabel, that is really, they are really pushing and betting for this supply from certified vessels. And what we are looking basically from OPAGAC is the concept of sustainability in the socioeconomic and environmental perspective, to taking care of the people, the planet, and profit, because most of the efforts that you well know has been devoted to environmental sustainability, and people associate that sustainability concept only to environmental sustainability, where we have been forgetting the most important part, that is the people. And this is where we have been trying to promote and contributing in the development of the Sustainable Development Goals, especially number 8, number 14, and number 12 as well, that is production and consumption of responsible products. And we are also part of the UN Global Compact, OPAGAC. So this is our communication on progress in implementing the principles of the United Nations Global Compact and supporting broader UN goals. So please open for any questions, and thanks very much again to all of you for listening.
Great, thank you very much, Julio. So does anyone have any questions for Julio? Like I say, feel free to put in the chat. You can send a private message to me if you'd rather do that, or you can put it open to everyone, or you can just shout out. No questions. I have a quick question, Julio. What is the interest from the supply chain globally in the standard?
We have seen a lot of interest from different people, and I don't know if it's an excuse or it's a kind of a repetitive question, is saying, well, we love this certification. We love the ideas that is promoting, but we are wondering if we will have enough supply to get our production certified with this. This is something that is always there. What we are replying to them is saying, well, it's a ball that has to start rolling at a certain moment. We have started with a couple of companies, and we have dialogues with different retailers in Europe, in Spain, and in France and Germany. And they like very much the certification, but they are worried about the supply for their production.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Holly at ISSF. Are the audit results made public?
Yes, they will. In a very short, there will be the report for 2019, excuse me. because AENOR is reshaping the landing page for the AENOR certification, and they are just finishing the 2019 report for last year. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Do any of the other participants have any questions for Julio? I have another question, which is great for me. Thank you. Julio, what are your plans for benchmarking against any future benchmarking scheme? For example, the GSSI's SSCI initiative. Is that something you're thinking about?
Yes, yes. In fact, we are in conversations with GSSI to see how are they developing their social standard. And we have finished just recently a benchmarking exercise with Conservation International with their Monterey framework that has been quite successful, I would say. And it was presented in the last Ethical Common Language Group on Seafish in London in January. And we introduce the results of that benchmarking. But of course, we are talking with GSSI to find the best way to benchmark our standard with whatever is developing on their side. Yes.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from any of our audience?
Hey Tom, it's Mel.
Hello, Melanie.
Hello Julio, nice to hear your voice on the webinar. I didn't get on for the very beginning and I apologise if you've covered this, but I thought, Julio, I just wondered whether it was worth us mentioning the MOU between RFBS and Thai Union and ourselves that's in preparation.
No, we didn't talk about that, Melanie. And nice to hear you too. I just got this question about the benchmarking and in fact, after the London meeting, as I mentioned, where we introduced the benchmarking exercise that we had with Conservation International, we had a chat with the RFS, with you, Mel, and Mike Platt and Tracy from Thai Union. And we are working in an MOU to try to find a common recognition scheme about the social conditions on board and the different standards that can appear. Because what we are quite concerned is about the eventual proliferation of different standards that could appear, but with let's say shortcuts to what should be the reference that in our opinion, the basic reference should be the international legislation already available and already implemented through basically the International Labour Organization with the 188 Convention, Working and Fishing Convention. So I believe that there's a lot of work that is done in different parts of the world. But we had to get together and find a common understanding of what are the minimum requirements for that recognition. But just thank you, Melanie, to recall that MOU and the effort that we are trying to do.
Yeah, just that people might find it reassuring because I'm mindful that there'll be people on here attending, a number of webinars with people like ourselves, Julio, who are working on this issue. And I wanted people to know that behind that, we're also working together to try and make sure that we can find ways to recognize each other's standards, to use, as Julio said, the sort of 188 as the platform for that, to try and reduce those kind of audit burdens and costs and things like that. And so the benchmarking reminded me of that, because I think that will help us also to ensure that as a part of working together, that those of us that are doing that are working, within a sort of quality context, if you like. I think it's just frustrating for all of us that particular one won't be out until next year, but I guess that gives us an opportunity to make sure it's going to work for everyone. And I wasn't intending to hijack your webinar at all there, Julio. I just felt it was good for people to know that we were working together behind the scenes to try and make this as efficient as possible for everyone. Thank you for that opportunity.
I've got a follow-up question, Julio. Will the audit report be on the OPAGAC website or on the AENOR website?
It will be on both. It will be in AENOR and will be in ours as well. Yes.
AENOR. I'm going to learn that one so I don't have to keep pronouncing it.
Yes.
Thank you. I didn't want to have a stab at it and get it wrong. Brilliant. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? No? Okay. Well, I'll say a big thank you for joining our webinar, and a special thank you to Julio for presenting. If you, oh, sorry, hang on. We have a question, Nicholas. Can you please explain the trip duration limit, brackets 8 months, in further detail? I can only see a reference to the contract duration in the standard. How would it sit with the RFVS requirement for a max months at sea?
Well, the requirement is for a maximum of 8 months at sea, but what we actually do, and that can be proved by the different elements available to the certifier, is that we have 4 months at sea working and 2 months holiday for most of the crew. Now it's increasing to 4 to 4 every time, but what we don't have is people on board more than 8 months in general, because it depends on the different vessels. But the normal time that the people spend at sea is 4 months working and 4 months home holiday, paid holiday. And in case that someone by different, like now, for example, with this COVID situation, we might extend the duration of the trip and the stay on board because of these special conditions for another maximum to 8 months. So, but this is the maximum that the ILO establishes, but we never go beyond the 4 months.
Did that answer your question okay, Nicholas? Yes, it does. Great. Okay. Final opportunity for anyone? Well, if you do have any questions or any feedback you'd rather ask offline or anything that comes to, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to put you in contact with Julio. Questions about that. Obviously, we always welcome any feedback on these webinars. We have recorded this, so there will be a recorded version of the webinar as well as the slides uploaded to the GTA website very shortly. The next webinar takes place on Wednesday. They're normally Monday and Thursday, but this week it's taking place on Wednesday, the 1st of April at 4 p.m. UK time. And it will be on the Seafood Task Force Tuna Vessel Standard, so another vessel-based webinar. And will be presented by Matt Owens from Tri-Marine, who also happens to be the Vice Chair of the Seafood Task Force Tuna Working Group. So if you are interested in vessel-based standards, this is another one for you to consider. So a final thank you for everyone for joining us, and thank you particularly for Julio for presenting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.